Will you watch with me?
3 a.m. I rubbed the sleep out of my eye. My toddler, Olivia, stared back at me. It is the middle of the night, baby. What are you watching? She frowned.
The Blue Channel. Will you watch with me? Please.
My wife rolled over and grunted a mustard combination of huh and what's that? That sounded more like She fumbled for her phone and fought with the sheets. She sighed, as if to let me know the effort, and I kissed her on the cheek. Go back to bed, babe. I got this one. I couldn't see anything, but Olivia reached out and grabbed my hand, and off we went. She led me into the hallway with a gleeful little hop step that shook the floor. I flicked the light switch by the bedroom. Nothing happened. Power's out, I grumbled. No television tonight.
No,
Lily wailed.
the TV still works. It does. Come see, Dad. Come see.
Rain pelted the windows. Wind whistled through the cracks. A major storm hit our small town in the valley. They closed the schools, my office, shut down too. The meteorologists predicted 3 inches of accumulation. And I can remember the gut-etching stress that the news caused us. About the house, about the cars, about everything. When you're a kid, bad weathers are exciting. But when you're a parent, you worry. You always worry. Time for bed.
But the Blue Channel is still on.
Olivia pouted.
Really, even without the power. It still works. I want to watch it together. Will you watch with me, please?
I groaned. Okay, sure. Let's go look. Hurry. She took off with the overloaded diaper solo. It almost snicked across the ground. That overworked piece of cloth reminded me that she was still just a little kid. Regardless how big she sounded, I loved everything about her at that age. We gotta change your diaper, kiddo.
I was watching,
She interrupted.
and they said they wanted to talk to you.
I stopped her. Who wants to talk to me?
The show.
She smiled.
The Blue Channel.
It's a kids show?
Yes,
And it's on at night.
only at night.
And they they want to talk to me. I don't know if it was the shock of everything or just my general clumsiness, but a nail between our old floorboards caught my pinky toe at just the right angle, and I shouted, "Fuck!" just before my 3-year-old pushed me. That's right, she actually pushed me.
No, Daddy, no. The man on the Blue Channel said no cursing. Never ever curse. It's inappropriate and rude, and you should know better as an adult.
I was astonished. I couldn't believe her tone. She was so articulate, so angry, so adult. The reaction caught me totally off guard. I'm sorry, honey. You're right. She turned and marched towards his room without another word. I followed. We quickly found the source of the issue. The only light in the house, a blue one, trickled out from underneath her door.
I told you.
I flished out the switches a couple times, just to be sure, but nothing else responded. I thought about the cows. I tried to wake myself up at the same time. Olivia took the leg as an opportunity to move. She darted ahead and pushed the door open. Wait, hon. The entire corridor became engulfed in blue. Our pictures, the blinds, the wallpapers. Everything had a blue tint to it. Even my daughter. At the time, I blamed the strength of the light on the fact that all others were out. I couldn't think any other cause.
Do you believe me now?
I found the television right where we left it, up against the far wall, next to the dresser. The blue channel was nothing more than a blank screen. You might recognize it depending on your age, because it's one of those you had to be there things. If an old television can't get a signal from a cable box, it'll show you a blue screen with input 1 or something writing on top. Totally normal. Another mystery blamed on bad technology. Sure, I still couldn't figure out how the damn thing drew power. I traced the cords on the wall and kicked out the plug. The screen stayed blue. I messed with the knobs on the front. Nothing changed. I gave the side one good smack before my daughter grabbed my hand and shouted clearly,
No, Dad! Do not touch the TV!
She punched me. I couldn't believe that. This wasn't play fight. This was real anger. Her eyes were determined. Her voice was shrill. She shrieked like a banshee. She aimed tiny little fists of fury in places she shouldn't know would yield results. And it disturbed me, even then. My kid knew not to punch people, let alone his dad. She never did this type of stuff. Not my Olive. Honey, stop it. She hit me again. Why aren't you listening? I snapped. Do you need to go time out? She whimpered and pointed at the television.
The man wanted to introduce himself to you, she sniffed. Before the ceremony.
What man? Suddenly, the screen flickered. A picture of a stage appeared. Honey, what man? Olivia pointed at the television.
Watch!
An applause track echoed without an audience. 5 figures emerged from behind a velvet curtain. They all wore masks with black clothes and black hats, so you couldn't see much, but the first one was the biggest, and they all seemed to get shorter in height from there. The guests were arrayed in a single file line towards the front of the stage. The imaginary audience cheered. The group found their way to 5 planted wood chairs towards the back and sat down. The audience grew quiet. Suddenly, movement backstage. A man in a rabbit mask walked out. He looked lost at first, then confused, then altogether shocked by the presence of the camera. The audience laughed at his dismay. He smiled and twirled his mustache a bit. He held his hand back and flexed. Then he danced back and forth, with knees up and elbows high. The audience roared with appreciation. He took a bow and nearly fell down. Even Olivia chuckled at that bit. Is that the man? She ignored me. I turned up the volume. Rabbit Mask parked himself in the highest chair above the other participants and paused with one leg on the top of the other, as if interviewing them. He pulled out a set of index cards. He dropped one of them to the floor and fell down picking it up. The audience laughed again. This is weird. Olivia slapped my shoulder. The clapping stopped. The group of characters stared blankly ahead. The man stayed still. Did we interrupt?
Yes,
she answered.
you did interrupt.
We waited. After what felt like an eternity, but could have been moments. When Rabbit Mask leaped from his chair and pounced forward, the audience gasped. He approached each of the guests, one by one, and peeled back their mask, slowly, as if revealing a prize. First up was a teenage boy with blonde hair, then a younger one with dark skin, then two little redheads. Finally, a boy, not much older than Olivia. I studied their faces. They all looked scared. Petrified would be a better word for it. The oldest looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Olivia? Who are they? Silence again, from my daughter and from the blue channel. This time we waited for at least a full minute. Okay, bedtime. Out of nowhere, Rabbit Mask rushed forward and grabbed the camera. He stared into it. At us. I mean, he really looked at us. His eyes were a crystal kind of blue. His lips were dark green. His teeth were chipped and crooked in back, but admirably straight in front. And when he laughed, his tongue flicked out, almost like a snake. Why is he doing that?
Don't talk, Daddy.
Why not? What is he going to do?
Watch.
Rabbit Mask let go of the cameraman. He marched back and forth, with his hands on hips as if insulted by the insolence. The children beside him giggled in unison, but they weren't smiling. Olivia, I stammered. Honey, Rabbit Mask hopped to one foot and held his other. Then he fell and sobbed like a baby. The audience howled with laughter. I felt my face grow red. Were they laughing at me? At what happened earlier? This isn't funny. My daughter giggled, but her face didn't seem to smile. She just stared ahead the television. The man stopped his whining. He regained composure. He mimed the steps of checking his breath against an imaginary watch as he sat down neatly again in his high wooden chair. We need to turn this off, sweetheart. Do you know how? I fiddled with the plug again. Nothing happened. I turned the dials. I kicked the side of the television. And when Olivia tried to grab my foot, I held her gently to the side and kicked it some more.
You're missing it, she shrieked. You're missing the best part.
I turned to look, if only for a little. There was a countdown of some sort displayed on the screen. The first word was 1. The camera panned to the Rabbit Mask doing a jig with one of the boys. Then 2. 2 boys dancing. Then 3, 4, 5. The screen cut. All of the guests were seated but one. The oldest was standing at the front with his mask removed and long hair untethered. His knees bounced together nervously. His skin appeared pale and sickly. A thin line traced down his light-colored boxes, and he opened his mouth to say something, to scream it, but his voice stayed muted. A figure approached him from the behind of the curtain. Oh no, he never saw him. Turn around, I whispered. Rabbit Mask held a long machete in his hands. What the fuck? I tried again, unsuccessfully, to crack the screen. I kicked it, I punched it, I smacked it until my hand felt broken and my knuckles went raw with blood. I just couldn't do it. I glanced back over for a second. Only a second. Rabbit Mask reared back and slashed at the poor kid's neck. One swift motion. His body fell forward like a sack of potatoes. I screamed. He hit him a dozen more times, over and over. In the back, in the legs, in the arms. Blood poured out from each wound like a hose. His body jerked and spasmed this way and that. I think the first blow had killed him, But that didn't stop the violence a bit. Olivia clapped through the whole thing. Honey, please, get your mother. She ignored me. I looked for something metal to crack the glass. I found a wooden bat. I swung and managed to splinter it a little bit. The picture stayed connected. I swung harder. The camera panned out for a wider spot. The remaining participants stared blankly ahead. Then they pointed at us. My daughter nodded and began to climb inside the television. My turn. Olivia! It's my turn! I know what you're thinking. Fuck you, right? Huh? There is no way that could have happened. Fine. Whatever. I have heard it all 1,000 times before. Believe what you want at this point, because I know the truth. She used the bottom as a ledge, and as soon as one little leg was inside, it disappeared with a horrific suckling sound. I held her left hand tight, like I held my own life. But it wasn't enough. Something pulled back, something stronger. Her arm disappeared with a pop. I heard her shout, and then she was gone. The blue channel stayed lit. Then the participants waited. I waited. Olivia ran out from behind the curtains. She smiled at Rabbit Mask and sat down in the 5th chair beside him. He smiled back. All of them ignored the growing pool of blood at their feet. Instead, they waved to me, one by one, like the end of a sick fucking sitcom. They stared at the camera and they waved. Then the screen shrunk. Then it went black altogether. And I never saw my daughter again. Hello everyone. I guess this is my 3rd story now. If you came this far, I hope you will give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Yes, as you see, I am not a native speaker, but I love reading stories, and I am waiting for your support. Until next time. Sweet well.